8 miles into a 10-mile tempo. It's the final one of a big marathon build-up, trying to hit that 5-minute mile pace to 5:05. 8 mile in, I just feel this rip, and the TFL is torn. Alright you guys, so that was 2016. You know, that quad or TFL tear, I'm in this exact same training location. It's 8 years ago, and it was such a monumentous event in my life that then taught me that I needed to do the little things. I had worked really, really hard. I'd done a lot of running. I had got myself to this new level of fitness I'd never experienced before, but I was just pushing too hard, going too fast, always trying to outdo my own splits, always trying to outdo what was set. I wasn't doing any gym. I wasn't sort of eating well, sleeping well, doing all that recovery stuff. And basically, if you're burning the candle at both ends, these things happen. But more about today's session. That was 4 times 3K. I started at 9:28, 9:21, I think then 9:09, and then 8:49. It was on track. I didn't think I looked great when I sort of watched back the footage. I think there's still a bit of stiffness and tiredness from the long run at the weekend. But that's kind of to be expected because it's 20 miles at 5:16 pace on a sort of tough loop. That's going to eat into where the legs are at. I've been taking training a little bit easier to try start to freshen up for London, which I'm now Sunday, so I'm a few days ahead of when I did that session. So I have 7 days to go. But now is all about getting your body, your chassis, if you want to call it, into a really good place for race day. But let's chat through, you know, how that session went and how I've learned over time to not make the same mistakes that perhaps I did, you know, 8 years ago. And now I don't have to be stressed and anxious. A, because I handle running a bit better, and B, because I'm not always trying to punch out really fast sessions, which can then lead to, you know, little injuries. I've finished that final hardish session. It wasn't hard, but my body was still a little bit tired from the long run that I posted about, that 20 miles at a really good effort. So today was on the track, and it was kind of moving through paces a little bit slower than marathon pace, and then up to a good bit quicker than marathon pace. And it's probably going from like your sort of first threshold LT1 up to sort of LT2. But in this final 10 days to 2 weeks, I try not to worry too much about LT this, LT that. And this is kind of like, think of it as you've done the scientific approach, you've done the good training, you've hopefully looked after that recovery stuff, your nutrition stuff, so you've adapted to all that training, you've absorbed all that training, and in those final sort of 10 days, that, you know, 7 days to go, most of the training can kind of be pace orientated, a little bit slower than marathon pace, a little bit quicker, right at marathon pace. And that's because science, to me, plays a role until maybe 10 days to go, 7 days to go. And then on race day, there's no science. You just get out there and you work and you go earn that, you know, big result. But that's the hard part done, believe it or not. It doesn't mean that race day isn't hard, but actually, if you think about it, if you're setting out, you know, 6 months before a big race, or 5 months or 4 months, and you set this big goal, you've then got to stay healthy, you've got to stay motivated, you've got to negotiate life, you have all these sort of things that you need to get through to get yourself to that start line, even just to stand a chance. And to me, that's the hard part. If you can get through all that training and do the work that's necessary, that's the really tough part. I reckon at the start of any build-up, you've probably only got a 50-50 or you know, 60-40 chance of surviving the training and getting to race day, because this is really difficult. You can get sick, you can get little injuries, family things can come up, you might just lose the motivation because of what's going on in life. It's really difficult. And so if you're in that scenario right now, or you've just been in that scenario, give yourself a pat in the back. That deserves a pat in the back. That deserves some self-love, honestly. So the hard work, in my mind, is sort of done. We've got ourselves to a week to go. And that final 4 times 3K, it was solid. I didn't feel amazing coming off the long run at the weekend, but I'm getting a lot better at how I process things. So I'm on the track, I'm doing those reps, I might not even be at marathon pace yet, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't feel great. And even when I've watched the footage back, I don't think I look great. So I try in those final 7 to 10 days to think not what fitness things could help me race better, but perhaps what could I do from a body perspective. And I think all those hard long runs, all that training, all that grind, you could say, it wears the body down. And so when I'm looking at those videos of me running around the track, doing these 3K reps, and I kind of go 9:28, 9:21, 9:09, 8:49, so sort of progressively getting quicker. I'm looking at how am I moving, and when I sort of look at how my body's moving, it's like age is catching up with me. It's like all these marathon build-ups is catching up with me. And I tend to think what happens is you start sitting down in your technique, and you can see like my bum's kind of down. I'm a bit like stiff. I'm kind of shuffling a wee bit. And there is an efficiency to that, but it can get to a sort of place where you're too stiff and you're coming down in your technique too much. And so basically that's like lower back stiffness, probably tiredness in the glutes, and hip flexor stiffness. And we kind of want to push those hips through a bit. And guess where you do that? In the gym. And so you're looking at a little bit of mobility work, a little bit of strengthening, and then also by resting a bit. I decided to actually have a rest day yesterday. And today's now Sunday. It's been 3-4 days since I've done that track session. But the rest day was to let a blister, believe it or not, heal up from that hard long run. Because I have a blister in a really nasty place, it's probably making me run a bit funny, which is stiffening up my foot. But this is the opportunity to get rid of these little things. I think there's a quote that says, it's not the mountain that will kill you, it's the pebble in your shoe. Or maybe it's not the mountain will defeat you, it's the pebble in your shoe. But that's those little niggles. And so sometimes you're throwing in little rest days, or you're doing a little bit of cross training, not because you absolutely have to, but you're protecting your body, which is the asset for race day. Suddenly race week, we get very vulnerable and very sensitive. And it gets to the point where a little blister or a little sort of this not feeling great, and your world falls apart. And so there's a little bit of advice in there. Try to get rid of some things. So the 4x3K was good. I've been journaling a lot this week, and I mean a lot. And it's going to sound, I don't fucking care what it sounds like. I've been writing in my journal, you are a beast. I love you, Stephen. You are so fit. You've worked so hard. You can do this. I'm really proud of you. And that can sound like something that you'd never even dream of doing. But I've really learned the sort of power behind a positive mindset. And I did in the last video that start-stop. And it was start believing in yourself, start telling yourself how hard you've worked, start telling yourself that you're bloody good at this, and remember who you are. And it was stop, getting in your own head, stop talking yourself out of these big goals, basically stop psyching yourself out. Because I've found what happens is if you're out there training or you're getting into race day, if you start telling yourself that, I feel a bit tired, I feel a bit sluggish, I might not be able to do this, suddenly you can't do it. You do feel your tiredness in your legs. You do feel tiredness, overall. But see, when you start backing yourself and you start saying, I'm an animal. I can do this. This is what I do all the time. This is what I'm trained for. I'm bloody good at this. It is amazing the sort of power behind that. And you almost have to talk to yourself in a way that a really positive coach would. Those really positive coaches that are like, whoa, you're looking good today. Whoa, who's going to stop you? You need to start talking to yourself in that way, especially in those final 2 weeks. I'm feeling positive. I'm going to keep reminding myself over this next 7 days, this is what I'm trained for, that I'm bloody good at this, and to make the most out of the opportunity. Don't read into this too much, but there was a quote from a guy called Jordan Peterson, and he said, part of what we're doing is we're aiming too high, right? And he says part of why sometimes we're feeling like we're failing, or we're sort of like getting stressed or anxious or nervous about things, is because we're afraid to aim a bit lower. And the world that we live in now with social media and, access to seeing how fast all these people are running all these races, we sort of forget how difficult running is. And so with that in mind, I want to go into this next week. I remember about mile 18 to 20 in Dublin, and I felt like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulders where it just went, kid, stop fighting, let it go. And I got really emotional at that moment because it really felt like I had carried weight, like shackles had been on my body, and I was always trying to, over impress people, and I was always trying to achieve these massive things, and then I would let the anxiety build and the stress build. And there was this moment in the race, probably about mile 18, and it just went, Stephen, just stop fighting this, stop, what are you doing? And it's almost like I'm going to carry that rhythm into this week. I don't need to achieve anything. I don't need to do anything. I just need to have fun. I need to go to London and express myself in the best way that I know how, which is by just running. It's really that simple. One foot in front of the other, get the breathing under control, get the effort, the marathon effort, and just run. There's no, you must run this time, you need... Says fucking who? Says what? What is wrong with us in this world that we're so defined by, you must do this, you must do that? Go out there, have fun, express yourself in the best way that you know how. If we're not saying don't aim, Jordan Peterson is not saying don't aim. He's just saying aim for something you can achieve, and not always aiming for something that maybe is so ridiculous you're constantly almost thinking that you're a failure because you're setting that bar too high based on all this other crap. I often think of it as, what pace would you run if it was just you? What pace would you run if there was no finishing time? How would you treat that event? And then start there and then work your way through it, work your way into it. None of us ever in that second half or towards the end of the race, we never hold back. We're athletes, we're dedicated, we're driven, we're competitive. But sometimes in that first half, you just have to control it a little bit and run you versus you. Nobody else is out there, nobody else exists. So start focusing on that. But set yourself free. I can't express that enough. Running and sport and life, it's like we're in our own prisons, in our own heads, and our own bodies. Loosen up a bit, set yourself free. The merchandise for the school arrives on Monday, so that's literally tomorrow. So you can start ordering that. The final sort of pre-sale, that stops because it's not sort of pre-sale anymore because they're arriving and they'll be sent out next week, which is sick. You can check out the running school. That's where the tips are for recovery, nutrition, strength and conditioning, psychology, how to handle races, etc. But take care, enjoy your running, be safe, train well, and good luck.